All right, welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited to dive into this one today because we're going to unpack the actual academic research behind how human connection is evolving in our digital age. We're looking at a massive study on how users perceive online dating. And honestly, the science behind why we swipe right is incredibly revealing. Okay, so here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover the digital dating revolution, then the psychology of profiles, look at exactly who dates online, explore why we click, and finally wrap up with the risks, rewards, and reality. Let's get right into it. We tend to think of digital matchmaking as this super modern 21st century invention, but the research actually points out that dating websites are really just a modern version of marriage agencies from the 1700s. Back then, people used printed ads to find a mate. So while the algorithms and the whole swiping interface are definitely new, our fundamental human drive for connection, that goes way, way back. We've literally just swapped out ink and paper for pixels and Dota. And it's wild how fast our societal perception of this changed. The data here shows that back in 2005, a huge chunk of society thought using these sites meant you were, well, desperate. But fast forward to 2013, less than a decade later, and boom, it became totally accepted as just a genuinely good way to meet people. That stigma practically vanished overnight.
Moving into Section 1, the digital dating revolution.
The researchers make this really profound point right out of the gate. Cyberspace is now just as important for interpersonal interactions as physical space. Think about it. For busy professionals or students, the internet isn't just for looking things up anymore. It's a 24/7 social hub. If you're working late or you're just stuck in the daily grind, your chances of randomly bumping into someone new really shrink. So, cyberspace steps in and fills that exact void.
Which brings us to Section 2, the psychology of profiles.
Have you ever wondered why we obsessively stalk someone's profile before saying hello? Well, communication science has an answer for that, and it's called uncertainty reduction theory, or URT. Basically, we are hardwired to seek out information to reduce our anxiety and predict how a stranger might behave. Dating profiles are essentially these giant self-reported data sets designed to help us do exactly that. We gather the data so we can feel safe before ever meeting face-to-face.
But here's the catch. How much data we actually choose to share varies wildly. The study breaks users down into two camps, those who practice self-disclosure and those who stick to self-privacy. Self-disclosers are usually highly confident and totally open about their personal lives and secrets. The self-privacy folks, they play it much closer to the vest, sharing only the bare, flattering minimum. Now, get this. The study found that highly educated individuals, like people with master's degrees, are actually far more likely to confidently spill their secrets online. They lean completely into self-disclosure.
All right, Section 3. Who exactly dates online? If you look at the demographics the researchers identified, it is literally a full cross-section of society. You've got older adults and highly educated retirees looking for companionship. But then on the flip side, you have single teenagers and even younger married adults with lower education levels. It's an incredibly diverse mix of life stages. The big takeaway here? There is no single type of person online. It is practically everyone. But there's this one specific number from the study's data, 3.478, that's absolutely fascinating. That was the maximum mean score showing which demographic is most driven by emotional motivation. And, surprise, surprise, it wasn't the teenagers and it wasn't the retirees. It was young adults, right in that 23 to 39 age bracket. They are the ones most heavily driven by loneliness and a need to connect emotionally. They aren't just looking for a casual date, they're craving real connection, probably because they just don't have the time or the local scene to do it in person. Let's look at Section 4. Why we click. If you map this whole psychological process out, it creates this fascinating funnel. All these external factors change how we view ourselves and others, which is what pushes us online in the first place. And then, depending on our confidence and what we choose to share, that whole digital journey funnels down into either a permanent long-term partnership or maybe just a short-term friendship. It's literally the human mating journey entirely digitized. And what are those influence factors at the very top of the funnel? Well, the study calls out things like loneliness, shyness, super busy careers, or just living somewhere with limited local options. One of the biggest points the researchers make is about how the screen itself acts as a shield. For naturally shy people, digital communication is a total lifesaver. It lets them bypass that terrifying anxiety of walking up to a stranger in a crowded room so they can build up confidence before they ever go on a high-pressure date. Finally, Section 5,
risks, rewards, and reality.
Look, the rewards of the digital dating reality are obvious. You get this massive pool of options, there's way less upfront risk of being rejected to your face, and again, it's brilliant for bypassing shyness. But the risks are just as real. We're talking catfishing with completely fake identities, widespread lying about backgrounds, and honestly, a real erosion of our face-to-face social skills. When we relied this much on text, we can literally forget how to interact with humans in real life. Actually, the researchers highlight that using these apps requires a completely new kind of social ability. Because we don't have traditional cues online, like you can't read someone's body language or hear the tone of their voice, you have to develop a sort of digital sixth sense to read their intentions. If you don't develop that new social awareness, you're super susceptible to manipulation and dangerous miscommunications. Which brings us to one final, absolutely fascinating question from the research. As these platforms get more and more gamified, with the endless swiping, the filters, the dopamine hit of a match, you really have to ask, are people actually falling in love with their matches, or are they just falling in love with the dating app itself? It's kind of wild to think that the gamification of matchmaking might be more addictive than the relationships it promises. Just something to chew on the next time you open up an app.